how are you defining whom you're writing for?
I think it's brand side marketers, it's agencies, it's media, it's tech, and then it's sort of also, frankly, it's the adjacencies.
Other, right.
So you can think about how do we sort of get really focused and define those segments. I think it's entirely doable, and I'm excited.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Building Blocks, where we get to hear from the best and brightest about how they've tackled the hardest marketing challenges while changing marketing for good. Today's guest took an interesting path to her leadership role in marketing, starting off with her early interest in mazagines to her now over 25-year career as a business journalist. Jenny Rooney covered advertising, marketing, branding, and executive decision makers. Now as a business leader, Jenny currently serves as Adweek's Chief Experience Officer, creating new initiatives and offerings to better serve marketing leaders and the global marketing ecosystem. I'm just thrilled to have Jenny on Building Blocks today. Jenny Rooney, so happy to have you. You're thrilled as a previous president and publisher for Ad Age. I just love that I get to have a conversation with you.
This is fun.
Talk shop, talk about all the things about marketing. Thank you for joining me on Building Blocks.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I want to start with, if I can, obviously you come out of the world of journalism, and for me, I am always fascinated by journalists generally.
Yeah.
Because they're an interesting breed. Did you worry about it? Did you want to be a journalist when you started off your life?
My whole life.
Like day 4, you're like, Mom, Dad, I want to be a journalist.
It's kind of a boring story because when I was 5, my mom would always have baskets of magazines around the house. And it was like Ladies' Home Journal and Good Housekeeping. I remember I couldn't pronounce it right. I said, I love mazagines.
Mazagines.
Mazagines. When I was little, I just thought I would say to my parents, I want to work for a mazagine. And I just love the form factor. I love the concept of, and it wasn't newspapers, but I just always somehow liked and gravitated to magazines. And so, yes, actually my entire education and everything else sort of
So you knew it early on.
I kind of did, which is weird and boring and very boring.
I mean, my son has always loved acting and he's kind of committed to that early. So he gets his 10,000 hours early, you know?
Yeah.
So I would say that there's a real focus that you'd like, I want to do this thing, and you're committed.
Yeah.
It's helpful.
I think what I thought about was I like the concept of writing, you know, and storytelling.
So get me from journalism into advertising and marketing in the trade space.
I had my master's degree in magazine journalism, and this is the late 90s. And, my first job was in working for a business magazine covering long-term health care and assisted living facilities and the regulation around that, which was so different than obviously what we're doing now. But very quickly, I moved into this industry that we know and love by accepting a job to come be a reporter at Advertising Age, Ad Age. Scott Donaton was the editor at the time, and he hired me to be the interactive agencies reporter.
Which was, at that point, kind of the burgeoning new area.
It was the hot area. Yeah.
That was awesome.
Don't call it digital. It was interactive.
It was interactive. It was very cool.
Yeah, very cool. And that was really the beginning. That was 1999.
So that was, you were certainly there at the beginning. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And you pivoted, obviously, from there into Forbes and then capturing sort of the energy of the CMO, the leadership.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that happen in between Ad Age and Forbes that frankly helped me continue to develop my expertise, my beat in marketing, advertising, branding, and ultimately marketing leadership.
I think that honing your beat, is obviously such an important essence for what you've defined as like, this is the Jenny Rooney brand.
Yeah.
I bring this thing. Were there any obstacles you faced in like getting to that?
Sure. I mean, I think there was obstacles probably presented themselves as some of the things that happened culturally and in the business world that I lived through. Obviously, I referenced the dot-com boom and bust.
Sure.
And so that was sort of a heady and then crazy time.
Yeah.
9/11 happened shortly thereafter. The unpredictability of the industry and the unpredictability of frankly, our world and how the two connect was something that I learned early on in my career. And so it wasn't so much an impediment or a challenge, but I started to understand the story of this industry. You have to always remember economic conditions, cultural impacts, and how all those forces sort of affect the business of marketing. I turned that into opportunity to kind of go deeper and ultimately kind of go deeper with the people who are tasked with making the decisions in this industry. And I ended up getting to a place where I had such appreciation for the challenges that they work under and the way they're able to execute in spite of those challenges. So I kind of witnessed it firsthand in my career and then was able to sort of translate that into how I was able to sort of learn from and get out of them the best that I could take then to then go share out as a journalist.
Interesting.
So
one of the things that I find so fascinating about journalism in particular is the trust factor. How do you develop that trust that a marketer, a senior executive will feel comfortable sharing with you something that is potentially detrimental to their evolution?
Yeah.
How do you develop that?
I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just being human. At the end of the day, these are human beings who have these big, lofty titles. And understanding who they are as individuals and as people, I think is something that I've always prioritized. And I don't think there's any, I was always able to manage to walk that line, especially as a journalist, between, maintain editorial integrity. But if anything, building and forging those relationships with people at a human level, that engenders trust because, you obviously create that construct where you're like, this is off record, but let's just have a conversation. I spent so much of my time pre-COVID when I was in the city meeting people for coffees and lunches and drinks and all the things that we all know and love to do anyway. But as a journalist, you have to do that too, because you just literally have to spend time with people you're writing about. Otherwise, you won't really understand who they are, what makes them tick, what keeps them up at night, what they're challenged with, because all of that information you need to have inform what you're covering and making sure that you're as relevant as possible. So it's all interconnected, I think, but just fundamentally it's relationships, It's just having real conversations. It's a lot of time and effort, but it's worth it.
Now, this whole journey, through all, you started in mazagines. Into the work that you've done at journalism, into at your time at Advertising Age, then Forbes, and then now and then obviously most recently, you pitched to the Adweek, I'm guessing leadership that was present, this new role. Tell me about what you pitched to them.
I proposed this concept of Chief Experience Officer, which I think is not unlike, frankly, a Chief Marketing Officer. I mean, I think to me, experience is how we as Adweek, how we as brand Adweek engage with our community, across all of our touch points. So one of the things I've said is, we have to think like marketer. We have to be so deeply understanding of our community, of our audience, of the people who consume us, that we are, as what I was saying before, as relevant, as needed, and as essential as possible. And the best marketers, as we all know, do that, right?
Of course.
So a chief experience officer is basically taking that, kind of bringing the outside in a meaningful way to inform all of those products and all of those touch points and all of that content that we're pushing back out to those people.
It's so awesome to hear you talk about this, is because I went through this when the time at Ad Age, and I was, as a marketer, I was like, I want to help this audience be appreciated and also understand what they're facing, and then service that audience in a way that they hadn't been in the past. And what a wonderful time for you to join Adweek and drive that I think, frankly, evolution you're already driving, but continue to drive that story. How are you defining whom you're writing for?
I think it's brand side marketers of different levels within. It's agencies, it's media, it's tech, to include ad tech, martech.
Totally.
And then it's sort of also, frankly, it's the adjacencies.
Right.
Yeah, it's entertainment industry. It's founders, it's investors, it's kind of, all of those pieces that I think have impact on this industry and vice versa. So you can think about, how do we sort of get really focused and define those segments, so we're not reinventing the wheel all the time. We're just hitting those people where they are, with the information they need when they need it. I think it's entirely doable, and I'm excited about us getting there.
How are you defining success for the organization? I mean, I can tell you, as at Quad, we do a lot of manufacturing and printing for so many different wonderful brands, but they are all in this evolution of figuring out what is the best way we can communicate with our audience about what their things are. I'm curious about how you're measuring success in this role, and also for the brand Adweek.
So I think success in this role is, like I alluded to before, if I can make sure that I am completely checking boxes around solving for the problems that are biggest in these people's lives. So we know we only have like a certain number of minutes of everybody's time at the top of every day.
I know.
We have to own that. We have to be part of this industry's essential diet of media download in that critical time. If we can be something that everybody relies on and can't live without, and we become truly that trusted and essential resource that powers people to do their jobs better, and then that in turn helps their companies perform better, then we will have been successful.
If we were to play a game,
yeah,
and I say, I have this great story that I'd love for Adweek to run.
Yeah.
I believe that by opening the door with that question, it becomes immediately like, I'm so sorry, I can't. I'm sorry, because you've told me about it, now I can't write about it. I have many metaphors that I've used to describe this challenge. How is it best for a marketer to communicate with any of the trade publications about something they like to get visibility on, that they believe is worth that story? What's the best door that they can go through?
Okay. First of all, don't call us a trade publication.
Sorry. Tell me.
Business intelligence resource.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Adweek is a business intelligence resource, everyone.
Yeah.
Trade publications is a word of the past. We don't use that anymore.
News. Yeah.
Yesterday's news.
I'm putting my hat on around this. I want to know who did this affect? I mean, we always talk about how is something driving not just the brand but the business. And I think we as Adweek are going to continue to start to get away from just looking at things for entertainment value and actually think about how do they connect dots. And so, as best you can articulate, like literally what did this do for the business, and actually get people who will go on record and be very candid about that. And I think if it's an agency, bring that client, and by the way, make sure it's the CMO, the highest level decision maker who is part of that. That's what's going to get most attention. I think at the end of the day, you also have to think what I was describing before. Adweek is a product. Adweek is a business. Adweek is a brand. So like the content that we're sharing isn't just in service of that person pitching it. It becomes part of what we're putting out in the world as representative of our value offering. You know what I mean? So like, is this something that people need to know?
Right. For young people that are looking to get into journalism, what do you think makes a terrific journalist? Like, what do you think attributes like, you know what, you might be a great journalist?
I think the ability to synthesize trends, obviously just sort of connecting dots and, a story standalone, just like here's the news that happened. Well, talk about the why behind it, or what is it indicative of, or start to get curious. I think curiosity is huge. And sort of never being satisfied with just reporting the what, obviously having to dig deeper and think about, okay, but what does this mean? What does that mean?
Right.
What's the so what?
You make an interesting point in some of the, I've obviously followed all of your writing and your work following the evolution of the CMO. Obviously, there's a trend nowadays about CMOs being eliminated, but also some CMOs are getting the CEO job. Mm-hmm. So both directions are happening. Tell me what you think about what happens to the CMO as they want to evolve beyond that role.
Not all CMOs want to go beyond, first of all, I'll say that. I mean, there are plenty of folks who don't aspire to go beyond. Right. I think there is a cohort of people who do aspire to CEO, or they've been handpicked to be CEO. And I think it's because they go beyond the functional mechanics of the role. That isn't for everybody. Some CMOs are perfectly happy and really feel like they're valued contributors in that CMO or equivalent title role.
What about the opposite trend with the CMO being eliminated?
Well,
or at least the title being eliminated.
Headlines come and go about this. I don't think this is the first time we've seen it. I think we've seen before companies eliminate the role, and they're not just replacing CMO with Chief Growth Officer, or Chief Commercial Officer, or something else like that, and they'll redeploy that.
Right.
But then we'll see examples, as we all know, that they'll bring it back, like Coke.
I call this the breathing in and out of companies. Like, well, sometimes it is, sometimes you don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you always need it. It's just defined differently. What does the company need that moment?
I think you have to take it case by case. Some of the headlines we've seen recently, you have to understand, you have to understand where's the business going.
Where's that company? What the situation of that company?
That's correct.
Right. I can't help but ask an AI question, if you'll help me. What do you think about AI in journalism?
I think just like anything, done well, it can be really additive and it can be very helpful. I think it could also be, cause some consternation and challenge for journalists. It's sort of like how marketers are thinking about it. It shouldn't be seen as a replacement necessarily, but an enhancement.
Like a partner, like help me figure out the basics of this.
Yeah.
Do better.
it can be a very cool way to sort of capture conversation and then sort of,
and then collapse it into
create content that comes out of that and then share that out. So TBD, but I think it's something that obviously we're all watching and keeping eyes on.
Jenny, thank you so much. You were just wonderful. I loved having you on the show. Thank you for all the wisdom you provided. I thought it was just great.
Loved being here. Thanks so much for having me.
You are welcome.